This is James Courage, the Chief Executive of Platinum Guild International. He joined PGI in 1996 and now is responsible for the development of global jewelry.
You're working very much with the industry as well as anything we're doing, if you like, in a generic way, because in the end, nobody goes to a PGI store, they don't exist. They go to one of the big retail stores, so through them, we obviously have to sell the product.
China is the largest market for luxury goods, and consequently, 63% of all platinum jewelry is bought by the Chinese.
It's nice to see you again, James.
Very nice to see you, Nancy.
What struck me is one particular number. It was that 63% of platinum jewelry is consumed by the Chinese. But I was a bit surprised about platinum, because platinum, the qualities of platinum are so unknown to the average person. So why do you think that number is so high here in China?
Because it's really been, it's a bit of a story, if I've got a moment to tell it.
You've got all the time you want.
And that is, we have to go back to the 1990s. Gold was predominant, and effectively 24-karat gold, so different from what we know as gold in the Western markets. And people were beginning to look for a white metal. White metals have become very popular in the Western market, particularly in engagement rings and wedding rings. People had moved from yellow to white. And understandably, people were beginning to look for the same thing in China. And through an initial cooperation, interestingly, between a Chinese and a Japanese company back in the 1990s, platinum came into the market and somebody set up a manufacturing facility. What they could do at the time was make a very reasonable profit. There wasn't great transparency about the price. And because platinum is essentially pure, you had a pure white metal to match the pure yellow metal. And that part of the business started to attract people's attention. The product was available. It was able to be sold in the stores. There was some restrictions.
But why not white gold?
Well, because there were some restrictions on getting a license to sell 18-karat gold at that time. So in many ways, platinum had a sort of open opportunity for a few years to get established. And the main difference, again, is that platinum at 95% and plus is pure. White gold can never really be much purer than 75%, because white gold essentially is yellow gold with the color taken out. So you've got to add other ingredients to make it a different color. And in China, it's always been important to people to have the pure form of the metal.
I am really very, very surprised about this, because I'm an American, and my mother had a lot of beautiful jewelry, and as a little kid, she used to say to me, this ring is platinum, and the reason it's platinum is because she drives. The Americans all drive cars constantly, and she said if it's gold, it all gets bent. So from the time I was a little kid, I knew platinum was stronger than gold. I didn't know about the purity. I just knew it was more expensive.
That's one of the reasons why it's more expensive. And in those days, it was quite a bit more expensive than gold. Things have changed a little bit now, in that the gold price in recent years has gone up a lot.
Do people buy gold, do they buy platinum the way they buy gold? That is, as an investment in bars?
No, because I don't think people see platinum in quite the same way as they see gold. Gold has thousands of years of history to its advantage, because nobody could melt platinum until about 200 years ago. So working platinum wasn't really possible unless you had the native metal and you found it in that form. So it was only really when the original Mr. Cartier and the original Mr. Tiffany came along, and they were looking for the perfect white metal to set their diamonds in, that platinum became part of the jewelry business. So in term times, although it's 100 or 200 years, it's a tiny history compared to the very long.
So it was only 200 years ago the technology to melt it down and make it into jewelry came into being because of Cartier. Was it Cartier or Fabergé?
Cartier, Tiffany, Fabergé. These masters of the jewelry business needed to have a white metal to set their diamonds in. Quite clearly, you set a diamond in a pure white metal, you show off the true colors of the diamond.
That's what I was going to ask you. Does a diamond, when it's put into a platinum setting, which is almost colorless.
You're going to get
shine more.
You're going to get the true color of the diamond coming through.
What are some of the most famous jewels in the world that have been made using platinum? Jewelry.
Well, we can, in America, we can look at the Hope diamond, which is probably one of the most famous diamonds in the Smithsonian Museum, the crown jewel sitting in the Tower of London. Most large diamonds, the many extraordinary diamonds that Elizabeth Taylor owned, most of those were set and secured in platinum.
The Duchess of Windsor once said, "After 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you should wear platinum." And on her famous Cartier cheetah breastpin, all the diamonds were mounted in platinum. Elizabeth Taylor was a gorgeous, famous Hollywood actress, and her diamonds were almost as famous as she was. Of course, they were set in platinum. Talk to me about diamonds and platinum, because before you joined PGI, you were with De Beers, the most famous diamond company in the world. And De Beers had, I would say, arguably the most brilliant tagline years ago. It was, "A diamond is forever."
Correct.
And "A diamond is forever" was on television, it was in the ads, it was everywhere. So effectively, if a man gives a woman a diamond, they mean they're going to stay together forever. I'm going to love you.
It was almost, how big is your love? You know, in America, they had a whole salary guideline thing where you needed to think about 2 or 3 months' salary as the amount that you should be spending on your diamond.
Is that true?
Which sounds very unadvertising, but actually it was very effective because it gave people a guideline as to what they should spend.
What is platinum doing? Because you have a knowledge of how just a saying like that can push the sales through the roof and brand the product.
We have the concept of pure, rare, eternal, which we feel is a terrific descriptor of platinum's, both its physical qualities, you buy it pure, it's rarer than other precious metals, and also the emotional side, the purity of platinum and the meaning of a relationship. The rarity of the ability to be able to celebrate that relationship with platinum.
How are you going to get that type of message out, though? In that usually people will say gold, unless you're really well schooled in jewelry.
Well, you've got to connect it. And I mean, I think the example that I have from China is quite a good one. And that is that we look for insights as to how the consumer sees a product. And platinum is seen as something that is rare and as something that is durable. So our line sort of translated back from Chinese into English for the pairings, the wedding rings in China, is never fading commitment. So in the never fading commitment, you kind of combine the durability side of it with obviously the wish that everybody has, is that their commitment in terms of a relationship will never fade, and platinum will deliver for you on the physical side. It's up to you to make sure that that commitment between the couple stays as never fading too.
So it's almost a contract.
So, well, it's a very emotional contract, I think, and that really is something that I believe we can represent, is the emotional side. We're kind of in there as what happens between the couple. So at a marriage, lots of passing over of wealth, but between the couple there's this emotional connect, and we're part of that emotional connect. There may be a diamond in there as well, but that diamond will be very often set in platinum, or if it's plain rings, this has become a big tradition in China. And you know, unbelievably, in a city like Shanghai, I think over 60% of the people getting married will get married with 2 platinum rings. So we have arrived in this market in quite a major way.
We have arrived. I was going to ask you if your biggest market is obviously the bridal market, weddings.
Well, you'd think so. And it is. That's what you would find pretty much everywhere else in the world. But in the Asian markets, there is a very big jewelry market, because one thing that happens here, we're talking a little bit about it at the conference, is that young people still acquire jewelry relatively early on in their life, and that jewelry is precious metal or precious stone jewelry. It's either going to be a gift from their parents, or it's going to be something that they buy for themselves to mark an achievement. They graduate, they have their first job, they have promotion, and there's this particular relationship that people will build up with a piece of platinum, which kind of talks about the inner strength of a woman. There's a Chinese word, which I'm probably going to mispronounce, called tija. which talks about that sort of inner strength that a woman has, and platinum relates to women to that. So the jewelry market, interestingly, in China is somewhat bigger than the wedding market, whereas if we go to the United States, it's very much the reverse.
James Courage is an expert, of course, on platinum and the Chinese consumer market.
It's the kind of default precious metal. We're the one who has to make a little bit more noise, but once people find out about platinum and its unique properties, particularly that it's unchanging. It will never be anything but a pure white metal.
You know, the Chinese are very into luxury products, as you know. As you know, luxury brands are doing extremely well here, as well as jewelry.
When you ask most consumers, they put platinum up there. It is the premier precious metal. And I think it's one of the reasons we've been quite successful in China over the years. People do realize that it's rarer.
Because China is the biggest market for you, which again doesn't surprise me, it's the largest market. I think it used to be Japan for all luxury things, and then America, but clearly China is now, I'm sure it is, just 6 months ago it was #2 luxury market. I'm sure it's #1 now. After China, who's your next largest market?
Well, Japan is the second largest market, as you correctly say.
And who's third, America?
You're absolutely right.
And after America, how does it go?
Well, then it gets interesting, because India is now the 4th largest market.
That surprises me. I've been to India. I spent quite a bit of time in India, and I would guess, because the jewelry is extraordinary, and there's this huge cultural impact.
Absolutely.
But it always strikes me, if you say, what did you see in India? The
gold.
Jewels, gold everywhere.
Well, let's put it into perspective. I think the Indian gold jewelry market is 600 or 700 tons. It's quite enormous. At the moment, the platinum market in India is around 3 or 4 tons, so it's a minuscule proportion. But because there is so much less platinum produced every year, if we got up to about 2 or 3% of the gold market in India, we'd have a very viable platinum market, and that is something we believe we can achieve for some of the same reasons that we've seen success in China. And that you have now a young Indian woman who's looking at white metal. She's quite excited by platinum, the special properties that she has. Interestingly, more than in China, she has to do a bit of persuasion on her parents, because the gold culture is so deep that they believe you can only buy gold. But we're beginning to see, and it's very interesting as we sort of follow our research through, that they're understanding that platinum has a meaning for this young woman, but here's something special that she likes. And we've also found a niche in the wedding market, which we feel we can grow, which is all again about, as I was saying in China, about the couple discovering their love. The wedding is all about great chunks of wealth passing from one generation, huge super family occasion. Couple probably haven't known each other for more than a month.
Those are arranged marriages in India.
So they're all arranged. So sometime later, they fall in love, and we're capturing that.
Hopefully they fall in love sometime.
Well, they do, and we've done the research to kind of to see that happens, and that then becomes, with the advertising we're doing in that market, your platinum day of love.
To sell a product, any product, but particularly something like jewelry, and particularly, as you say, when it's platinum, and a huge number of, I believe, a huge quantity of jewelry is made here in China out of platinum. How did that come to be? Was it ever made in South Africa, or was it always exported?
It was pretty much always exported. So you finish the mining, you get the ore out of the ground, and platinum doesn't come in vast quantities. You get 4 grams, so about a wedding ring's worth in every ton of ore that comes out of the ground. So
That's all?
Yeah. So you've got to take that ton, get rid of 99% of it effectively, to get your platinum and the other metals that come with it, the other platinum group metals. China is the most, how would I put it? The margins in China for plain platinum jewelry are lower than anywhere else in the world by a long way. So if you're outside of the country and watching this, it is the value place to buy plain jewelry, because it's still largely priced on weight rather than on piece, which is the traditional way 18-karat gold or diamond jewelry is priced.
So it's a good buy.
So it's a remarkable buy, yeah.
I didn't know that. So when you say that, you mean as opposed to piece, you mean other jewelry is priced because of it's a finished product. It has a craftsman. It has.
Well, it's still got that in there. So if you go into a jewelry store in China, you'll see the price quoted on a board for the metal for that day, which will be at a slight premium over the raw metal price, if you like, but only at a slight premium. And
so a finished ring, done by craftsmen, will be priced according to
the weight. You can go to a factory in Shenzhen that produces more platinum in a year than the whole of the United States consumes. So it's on a different scale.
When you were down in Shenzhen, did you talk to any of the factory workers?
Yeah, I've been going to Shenzhen for years, and I've built up some very good relationships. My Mandarin is not very good, so somebody else helps me understand what's going on. But you form these good relationships, and what I've already seen is a generation change. I'm now dealing with the sons of some of the people who started those companies sort of 15 or so years ago.
Pride in what they do.
Yeah, and it's been a great relationship because we have worked with them. We've helped push the market for platinum up through the programs that we've operated. They've been beneficiaries from that. We couldn't do without them because if there wasn't somebody making the platinum, then there wouldn't be anything for us to advertise and hopefully for the consumer to buy.
This is an exquisite sculpture called the Olive Tree. It was designed by the Italian artist Agostino Capella. He used both platinum and diamonds, and the process of making it lasted 2 years. Platinum, of course, aside from the fact that it goes into industrial products, you think of it as jewelry.
Absolutely.
But I know there have been some really extraordinary pieces actually made out of it, including, this is amazing, this is a tree made out of platinum, which is going to be on display, I think, in Hangzhou and then back here in Shanghai.
Right.
Tell me about it and what's the purpose of it?
Well, it's a nice story, because what we're trying to do is to bring to China some exciting design from overseas. And Italy, really, I think people see as the cradle of jewelry design. And there's this company there that created this unique olive tree. It weighs about 3 kilos. It's about 1 meter high, maybe a little less. And it's all platinum sitting on a marble base. So you can imagine how long that took to make, and you can imagine how valuable it is. But what it really...
How valuable is it?
Well, I'll have to come back to you on that, but it'll be millions. But what it was really designed to do was to show how you can, as a craftsman, make something absolutely stunning as a work of art in platinum. And the second part of it is that the leaves have little diamonds on the end. So what you can create is a very pretty little jewelry collection out of the leaves and the diamonds that people can wear. But really to see it in its original form, and we've been able to bring it with the cooperation of Z-Bird to China and showcase it in Beijing, Shanghai, and Hangzhou, and I think it's going to be back in Shanghai about the time this goes out, so hopefully people can see it.
All right, how much? How much is it worth approximately?
Well, I think it's worth, what, about $5 million?
Wow, there's another piece.
But look at it, because you should enjoy the artistry rather than think of the money. And the other piece, which was certainly sold for a lot more than that created a lot of excitement, I think pretty much globally a few years ago, was a piece by an artist called Damien Hirst, which was a human skull, which was all in platinum, set pretty much entirely with diamonds, and I believe that was sold for something like $50 million.
Oh, I remember seeing it. I mean, the press covered that. That was absolutely extraordinary. But these are unusual pieces.
These are unusual pieces, and what tends to happen is that people focus on the diamonds, and obviously what we're trying to do is to remind people you can't set diamonds in thin air. You need to set them in the best precious metal.
And the part that I find very interesting is that you say, maybe you could explain this to me, that platinum can hold a diamond better than gold. So often, even the ring I have, the stone is held with platinum.
Right.
But the rest is
gold.
So what does it do? I don't really understand.
Well, kind of most simply put is that if you've got the claw holding the diamond, when you bend that claw over, it stays exactly in that place. I think one of the things that people are always recommended to do is go back and see your jeweler fairly regularly, have them look at the setting, because, you know, we live tough day-to-day lives, and it's good to make sure that those settings are secure and properly looked after.
The process of mining platinum is very complicated and very difficult because it lies at least 1,400 meters deep under the earth. That and the fact that it is a rare earth metal makes it so expensive. Is it one of the most difficult things in the world to have a product that requires mining? Given the nature of mining, the danger inherent in it, and the cost. Let's just say I'm in the platinum. I own a mine. I'm going to spend $1 billion to...
And you're not going to get a cent back for 10 years, so you've got to be...
Yeah. For 10 years, right. Usually in most countries, I'm sure Africa is no exception, miners are paid very, very low wages, and they do just yeoman's work. I mean, it's fierce work. But recently, as you know, in the press in South Africa, was a terrible tragedy.
Marikana mine.
Yeah. About, is it 34 people were killed?
34 people were shot by the police. Yeah.
And 2 police were killed as well. And that actually, it was a platinum mine. Yeah. But it had to do with 2 unions, two sets of mining workers, unions that were clashing. Is that correct?
It's a complicated issue, but I think essentially that's certainly part of it, in that there is an incumbent union on most of the mines, and there was a new union that was trying to recruit workers.
But it begs the question about social responsibility with mining. People who buy diamonds and buy platinum and buy gold, particularly the young generation, are very aware of where it comes from. And often they'll go back and look at the source and say, if this was done, you know, risking the lives of the workers, I won't buy that brand. Are you finding that in platinum, or that hasn't affected it?
I don't think so. What you have to remember, which is always the other side of the coin, is these people have chosen to do this work. They are quite well paid by South African standards. They may not be well paid by what we would think are Western standards, but there's been obviously a lot of looking into the statistics in recent weeks as a result of this massacre. But as a result of that job opportunity and skills that can be learned around the mining operation, because not everybody is underground, there is a huge number of people who benefit from this. And I think that can sometimes get forgotten in the other side of it, which is the emotional reaction, saying, well, we have nothing to do with this. Well, have nothing to do with it. You're probably putting 1 million people into a much more difficult situation than they would be in otherwise. So it's trying to find this balance where you are working to the highest safety standards, you are working to help these people have a better life, you're helping to try and make the conditions under which they work optimized, and there's more mechanization as a result of that, but still individuals seeking work is an absolute priority for the South African government. There are huge percentages of people in South Africa who have no job. So what you have here is a stable job, a chance for education, and a lot of skills being learned around the very hard bit of the mining in the middle, which take people into better careers going forward.
I understand that, as you explained very well, the actual mining process employs, as you say, millions of people. And I did notice, or at least I thought, a lot of these mines are owned by Brits. Is that right?
The largest, yes. The number 1 producer is a subsidiary of an English company, and the number 3 producer is a British company.
And what about the diamond business? Is De Beers headquarters in the UK, or?
Yes, no, De Beers is headquarters. Well, they have a headquarters in South Africa, and they have a headquarters in the UK. And recently they announced that a lot of their operations are going to be moving to Botswana, which is really the largest producer of diamonds now in Southern Africa.
I'm always fascinated with people's career paths, you know, what their life was when they were a young person, right. You know, what their parents did for a living. Tell me about you. What did you study in school?
I studied, actually, interestingly, French. I should have been more adventurous and studied Asian languages.
I was going to say, you studied geology.
I did do it. Well, I did a bit of geography and I did a bit of chemistry, and that's been interesting. But I did French at university, and then I did work in what was then called merchant banking, and today would be called investment banking for a short amount of time, but very short amount of time. And then I went into De Beers really as quite a young man, and started traveling fairly soon after that. Went out to South Africa for the first time.
What did you do for them? What was your first job?
I was involved in corporate public relations. And that was at a time when there was a huge amount of expansion going on, when new mines being discovered and opened, and the diamond business was going through a very strong growth period.
Did you live in South Africa?
I did. I spent 2 years living in South Africa. In fact, my son was born in South Africa, so that was a bit of excitement. My dear wife arrived in South Africa about 6 months pregnant, left South Africa about 6 months pregnant. So we had one born there and one conceived there.
And so you have a daughter, a grown daughter, whose wedding
took place last year.
And then your son, is he in school?
And he's working in advertising in Melbourne.
So the apple does not fall far from the tree.
So that's right. So it's great to get out here because it just occasionally gives me the opportunity to go down and see him in Melbourne, because otherwise it's a long way away.
I am told that you're quite a marathoner.
Well, I have run a marathon.
Well, you're really tall. How tall are you?
I'm at about 191 or something, or 6'3".
So, I mean, doesn't that put you at a benefit? I mean, very long legs.
Yeah, it worked. And now I ran the New York Marathon, but this is back in the 80s. I was very lucky. This is when I was working for De Beers, and I was working on the American market, which interestingly at the time, because of antitrust reasons, we physically couldn't go into the country on business, but we could go on leisure. Got a ticket into that, and I did do all the right training, and I really enjoyed it, and I ran it in 3:36 or something, which wasn't a bad time for somebody who's not a full-time athlete, and it was just that experience. And
what is it that appeals to you about running?
I think it's the idea of being relatively fit. I take health very seriously. I've always...
Platinum jewelry is consumed by the Chinese. But I was a bit surprised about platinum, because platinum, the qualities of platinum are so unknown to the average person. So why do you think that number is so high here in China?
Because it's a bit of a story, if I've got a moment to tell it.
You have all the time you want.
And that is, we have to go back to the 1990s. Gold was predominant, and effectively 24-karat gold, so different from what we know as gold in the Western markets. And people were beginning to look for a white metal. White metals have become very popular in the Western market, particularly in engagement rings and wedding rings. People had moved from yellow to white. And understandably, people were beginning to look for the same thing in China. And through an initial cooperation, interestingly, between a Chinese and a Japanese company back in the 1990s, platinum came into the market and somebody set up a manufacturing facility. What they could do at the time was make a very reasonable profit. There wasn't great transparency about the price. And because platinum is essentially pure, you had a pure white metal to match the pure yellow metal. And that part of the business started to attract people's attention. The product was available. It was able to be sold in the stores. There was some restrictions.
But why not white gold?
Well, because there were some restrictions on getting a license to sell 18-karat gold at that time. So in many ways, platinum had a sort of open opportunity for a few years to get established. And the main difference, again, is that platinum at 95% and plus is pure. White gold can never really be much purer than 75%, because white gold essentially is yellow gold with the color taken out. So you've got to add other ingredients to make it a different color. And in China, it's always been important to people to have the pure form of the metal.
I am really very, very surprised about this, because
This This is James Courage, the Chief Executive of Platinum Guild International. He joined PGI in 1996 and now is responsible for the development of global jewelry.
You're working very much with the industry as well as anything we're doing, if you like, in a generic way, because in the end, nobody goes to a PGI store, they don't exist. They go to one of the big retail stores, so through them, we obviously have to sell the product.
China is the largest market for luxury goods, and consequently, 63% of all platinum jewelry is bought by the Chinese.
It's nice to see you again, James.
Very nice to see you, Nancy.
What struck me is one particular number. It was that 63%. I'm an American, and my mother had a lot of beautiful jewelry, and as a little kid, she used to say to me, this ring is platinum, and the reason it's platinum is because she drives. The Americans all drive cars constantly, and she said if it's gold, it all gets bent. So from the time I was a little kid, I knew platinum was stronger than gold. I didn't know about the purity. I just knew it was more expensive.
That's one of the reasons why it's more expensive. And in those days, it was quite a bit more expensive than gold. Things have changed a little bit now, in that the gold price in recent years has gone up a lot.
Do people buy gold, do they buy platinum the way they buy gold? That is, as an investment in bars?
No, because I don't think people see platinum in quite the same way as they see gold. Gold has thousands of years of history to its advantage, because nobody could melt platinum until about 200 years ago. So working platinum wasn't really possible unless you had the native metal and you found it in that form. So it was only really when the original Mr. Cartier and the original Mr. Tiffany came along, and they were looking for the perfect white metal to set their diamonds in, that platinum became part of the jewelry business. So in term times, although it's 100 or 200 years, it's a tiny history compared to the very long.
So it was only 200 years ago the technology to melt it down and make it into jewelry came into being because of Cartier. Was it Cartier or Fabergé?
Cartier, Tiffany, Fabergé. These masters of the jewelry business needed to have a white metal to set their diamonds in. Quite clearly, you set a diamond in a pure white metal, you show off the true colors of the diamond.
That's what I was going to ask you. Does a diamond, when it's put into a platinum setting, which is almost colorless,
you're going to get
shine more?
You're going to get the true color of the